They call him Poatan, which means hands of stone. But really, he's more like a ghost. Cold, silent, emotionless. He doesn't dance on his walkout. No theatrics, no swagger. He just walks straight into war. This is a man who used to drink a liter of cachaça every day. Now he knocks out champions for fun. This is the story of Alex Pereira, the UFC star who drinks beer, rides motorcycles, and still wrecks everyone in front of him.
That is gonna do it, Alex Pereira! Welcome to the history books!
He grew up in the kind of place you don't just walk out of. No silver spoons, no lifelines, just the weight of survival pressing down from every direction. In the favelas of São Paulo, childhood is something you grow out of fast, if you're lucky enough to grow up at all. Alex Pereira was born into a family of 9, squeezed into a tiny house his father built slowly with leftover construction materials. His dad worked as a bricklayer, bringing home whatever scraps he could. His mother stayed at home. The walls were thin, the money was thinner, and outside the door was a neighborhood where fists often spoke louder than words. School never made sense to Alex. Books didn't mean much in a place where the future seemed out of reach. He was restless, always moving. He and his brother were inseparable back then, thick as thieves. They fought kids on the street and had each other's backs through everything, but time would chip away at that bond. At 12 years old, Alex dropped out of school and started working full-time at a tire shop. He wasn't just sweeping the floor. He was lifting tires, stacking rims, breaking his back in the heat while most kids were still learning fractions. From 7 in the morning until sunset, he worked without complaint. But life at the shop came with its own problems. He was surrounded by older men, hardened by years of labor, and many of them drank to forget. Alex followed suit. What started as curiosity quickly became routine. By 16, he was drinking a full liter of cachaça every single day. His brother, meanwhile, took a darker turn. While Alex buried himself in work and alcohol, his brother started dealing drugs. They drifted apart, slowly at first, then completely. At 17, Alex got the call no one's ever ready for. His brother was gone. Drugs had claimed him, and with him, a piece of Alex's soul. He didn't stop drinking, he just drank harder, until his body ached, and his mind went numb. Most people fight to survive, but Alex? He was fighting just to stay afloat, hoping the bottle would quiet the storm. What no one realized yet was that deep down, something was still burning, something that hadn't given up, not yet. But how far can a man fall before he decides to climb? Alex Pereira had already lived through more loss and darkness than most people twice his age. He had no formal education, no clear direction, and no real plan to escape the cycle he was stuck in. But somewhere between the bottom of a bottle and the silence of grief, a thought kept clawing its way back into his mind. Maybe fighting could be more than just survival. Maybe it could be a way out. He walked into a gym for the first time, not because he wanted to become a champion, but because he needed something to keep him from drinking himself to death. He was raw and unpolished, stiff in the ring, breathing heavy after only a few minutes of movement. There were no cameras, no hype, no big promises, just a kid with tired eyes trying to punch his way back into control. His progress was slow, frustrating at times. There were nights he thought about quitting, mornings where the hangover felt heavier than the gloves. But he stayed with it, kept showing up. Bit by bit, the alcohol started to lose its grip. Sweat replaced the burn of cachaça, and the gym began to feel like the only place where the noise in his head quieted down. In 2012, everything came crashing back. During a kickboxing match against Jason Wilness, Alex got dropped hard in the second round. He made it to his feet, but barely. The weight of exhaustion, disappointment, and doubt nearly broke him. For the first time in years, he felt afraid, not of his opponent, but of himself. Afraid that the climb had reached its peak, that maybe this was as far as he could go. That's when Balakwa Wera entered his life. A trainer with indigenous roots and an old soul, Wera saw something in Alex that others missed. Not just strength, but pain. Deep, unresolved pain. He pushed Alex in training, but more importantly, he introduced him to healing. Not just physically, but spiritually. Wera taught him about the traditions of the Pataxo people, about the rituals, the dances, the ancient symbols that connected them to something bigger than themselves. After reconnecting with his roots and finding clarity through discipline, Alex Pereira began fighting like he had something ancient flowing through his veins. The rituals, the face paint, the silence before the storm, it all became part of his identity. The man who once drowned himself in alcohol had turned into a cold, focused weapon, and the world had no idea what was coming. He started tearing through opponents on the regional circuit. First the national scene, then Pan-American tournaments, then South American titles. One by one, names began to fall, and doors started to open. Soon enough, he was standing under the lights of Glory Kickboxing, the highest level the sport had to offer. But even there, Pereira was different. He did not beg for attention. He did not scream for the spotlight. He let his fists do the talking, and they were loud. Within a few short years, he captured the Glory middleweight title. Then he moved up and claimed the light heavyweight belt too, becoming a two-division champion. He was dominant, terrifying, but still largely unknown to the casual fan. That was about to change, because one name refused to stay buried. A familiar figure had begun carving his own path on the other side of the world. Israel Adesanya, flashy, slick, and undefeated.
Israel Adesanya, the best middleweight on planet Earth.
While Pereira was quietly stacking belts in Glory, Adesanya was lighting up highlight reels on his way to becoming the UFC's next superstar. But the truth was, they had already crossed paths. Their first fight in kickboxing was close. Pereira walked away with the win, but not without controversy. Some argued Adesanya edged it on points. Others said Pereira's pressure sealed the deal. The rematch left no room for debate. Alex caught him clean with his signature left hook and folded him like a chair. Adesanya was out cold. No slow count, no questions, just silence. From that moment, a rivalry was born. Even as Adesanya rose through the UFC ranks and became the middleweight king, there was always one shadow behind him. Pereira never spoke much, but his presence lingered. The knockout haunted highlight reels, whispered in interviews, shown in fan-made montages. But knocking out Israel Adesanya wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Even as Pereira ruled over Glory with 2 belts on his shoulder, he remained an outsider to the MMA world. His name was known in striking circles, feared in kickboxing gyms, but most UFC fans had no idea who he was. That was fine by him. He never cared much for attention. Outside the cage, he lived like a ghost. No interviews, no flash, no games. Just beer, bikes, and a quiet kind of menace. When people talk about him, they always come back to one thing: his hands, heavy, fast, surgical. He rides like a rebel, lives like a biker, but fights like a sniper. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just violence delivered with silence. Then came the call that would change everything. Glover Teixeira led him to Connecticut. Glover was preparing for a #1 contender fight and saw something in Pereira that reminded him of himself. What began as training turned into brotherhood. Glover became more than a coach. He became a guide. He sharpened Pereira's ground game, taught him wrestling, jiu-jitsu, cage awareness, and most importantly, strategy. Pereira soaked it all in, humbled and focused. He had already dominated one world. Now it was time to conquer another. In 2021, Alex Pereira made his UFC debut. No easy fights, no warm-ups, just cold knockouts. The power translated, so did the fear. Opponents saw him in weigh-ins and already looked like they wanted to go home. There was no emotion in his face, just that slow, methodical energy that said everything without saying a word. The tension that had been simmering for years finally erupted on the biggest stage possible. UFC 281, Madison Square Garden, bright lights, sold-out crowd, and the main event that felt more like destiny than matchmaking. Israel Adesanya was the reigning king, confident, composed, ready to erase his one haunting blemish. But across from him stood Alex Pereira, expressionless as always, fists loaded with history. The fight was close, brutal, and technical. Adesanya controlled much of it with movement and range, but Pereira kept marching forward, round after round, refusing to fade. In the fifth and final round, when most fighters would coast to a decision or fold under the pressure, Pereira turned into something else. A switch flipped. He cornered Adesanya against the cage, let loose with a storm of punches, and dropped him in a heap. The ref waved it off. The world exploded. The UFC had a new middleweight champion. Pereira stood over the man who once mocked him, who said he would fade into obscurity. There were no words exchanged, only a look. He had climbed from a tire shop in São Paulo to the pinnacle of combat sports, dragging his demons along with him every step of the way. But revenge doesn't always come without response. 5 months later, the rematch was booked. Same arena, same rivalry. But this time, Adesanya came in with a different look in his eyes. Calm was replaced by fire. In the second round, Izzy baited Pereira into a flurry, then unleashed a perfect counter combination that sent the Brazilian crashing to the mat. Pereira had never been knocked out in MMA before, and just like that, the score was tied. 1 knockout each, 1 belt each, 1 rivalry that defined an era. But in Pereira's mind, the war was already over. He had beaten Adesanya in 2 sports. He had knocked him out first. He had dethroned the king on the biggest stage in the world, and more importantly, he had nothing left to prove at middleweight. He moved up to light heavyweight and stepped into the octagon with Jan Błachowicz, a former champion known for his toughness and Polish power. It was a hard-fought battle, but Pereira edged it out and got the win. Soon after, he challenged for the vacant title and won. Just like that, he became a 2-division UFC champion, just like he did in glory. But Alex Pereira is more than just a collection of knockouts and titles. The real story begins when the cage door closes and the cameras stop rolling. What makes him different isn't just how he fights, it's how he carries himself when no one is watching. Pereira is stoic by nature, a man of few words with eyes that say more than most people could in a full interview. He does not pace in warm-ups or shadowbox in the mirror. He sits still, face painted, body still, breathing deep like a soldier waiting for orders. He does not walk out to a fight. He marches into battle. Before every fight, Pereira performs rituals passed down from his indigenous ancestors. The tribal paint, the focused silence, the ceremonial calm, they are not for show. They are sacred, a way of connecting to something greater than the moment. A reminder that every step forward is part of a longer journey that began long before the lights, the belts, or the fame. His heritage runs deep, tied to the Pataxó people of Brazil, a tribe once forced into silence, but never stripped of spirit. That connection gives Pereira a different sense of purpose. He does not fight for fame. He fights to honor bloodlines, to carry names that history tried to forget. In interviews, when he chooses to speak, he often mentions his brother, the one who never got a second chance, the one whose path ended before it began. Every win, every milestone, every belt is a silent tribute to him. In another life, Pereira believes his brother could have been standing beside him. Pereira once said, "You need courage to step into the cage, but real courage is when you go through hell and come back stronger." That is how he trains. Calm, precise, methodical. He is not the loudest in the gym, but his focus is unshakable. Every session is war. Every drill has purpose. He still rides his motorcycle through the back roads of Brazil and Connecticut like a man who owns every mile. He still trains in silence, still sharpens his tools like war is always just around the corner. And when the fight is done, when the gloves are off and the cage door swings open, he still allows himself 1 beer, not to escape like before, but to celebrate what he earned with blood and sweat. The man is still knocking people out cold, still walking through some of the most dangerous fighters in the world like they are part of the process, not the problem. He does not blink when he hits them. He does not chase chaos. He just finishes what he starts. Now that his reign at light heavyweight has ended, the road ahead is still wide open. There are monsters in that division. Jiri Prochazka with his wild movement and unpredictable strikes. Magomed Ankalaev already tested him and came out on top, handing Pereira a hard-fought loss and taking the belt in the process. But Pereira is not done. He has bounced back before, and no one doubts he will do it again. And still, the name Israel Adesanya hovers in the background. Fans want a trilogy. One more battle to decide who walks away for good. Pereira has not said much about it, but he does not need to. That rivalry is etched into history, no matter what happens next. If the third fight ever comes, it will not be about scorecards or belts. These days, Alex Pereira is not chasing fame or trying to prove anything to anyone. He has already done what most fighters only dream of. Multiple titles, multiple divisions, multiple eras of dominance. But for him, it was never about gold around the waist. It was about something else. What makes Pereira so dangerous isn't just the power in his hands. It's the life behind those punches. The heartbreak, the discipline, the pain, the silence. You saw him knock out Adesanya. You saw him take the 205 belt. But what's coming next could be even more explosive. So if you want to be there for the moments that will define this era of MMA, hit subscribe, because the next knockout could be his biggest yet.